By July, he was completing a base on Guadalcanal, preparing to cut our supply route to Australia. We couldn't wait for ships that were building or troops that were training. We must stop him with what we had there and then. On August 7th, 1942, we landed Marines on Guadalcanal. We surprised the Jap, and the landings were easy. But we were just in time. In another 2 days, Jap planes would have been operating from Henderson Field, and the landing that had been so easy would have been well nigh impossible. But the Jap wanted Guadalcanal and strove desperately to take it back. Duels and in furious close-range night actions, our Navy slugged it out with his. Our forces were numerically inferior, but we hung on. Little by little, we chopped away at his ships, until by the end of the year we had gained command of the sea approaches to the southern Solomons. In 1943, the Marines were relieved by the Army. Our victory had decisively stopped the enemy advance, throwing him from offense to defense. We had reversed the wartime strategy of the Japanese Empire.
Okay, it's Friday, 10 February in the year of our Lord, 2023. Welcome for the second hour of the late afternoon, early evening edition of the War Room. Of course, on Fridays, they always get these interesting news drops. But in this show, I want to pull the camera back and get into some depth of a former Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, and also then we have the one and only Royce White, who's launched a new radio and content venture. I want to get into Royce, his thoughts about everything that's going on in this new Congress. Chris, 80 years ago, yesterday was the end of, in 1943, within 1 week, you had the German army surrender at Stalingrad, and you had the Japanese army surrender at, a lot of them didn't surrender, just, didn't want to be captured, but surrendered or removed from Guadalcanal, really the inflection point of the Second World War. You spent, 34 years? You retired as a colonel?
Yeah, sure did, Steve. Did
34
reps,
years of special forces.
You know what I was thinking about? You know what I was thinking about when you were running that, man? We don't make them like that anymore, do we? Freaking Bull Halsey, that dude, I mean, the stones on that guy. You think about doggone Edson, the Marine Raider, who just went behind enemy lines and ripped them apart with basically nothing. I mean, it was like, hey, here's a rifle and take, what do you think they carried? Like 60 rounds of ammunition. Guys starved. Just doggone tough Marines. Talk about, oh my gosh, then we talk about Europe. Had that guy Patton, remember, everybody thought he was crazy. Doggone, that cat knew how to fight. I was thinking, thanks for having me on, because you got me thinking from talking earlier in the week. You put up that book, Unrestricted Warfare, from the Chinese colonels, who I think ended up retiring like really high up. They were generals before they were done. And I thought about that scene from Patton, remember, where he's about to fight Rommel in North Africa, and that great scene where it's in the evening and he has Rommel's book Attacks, and he goes, "I figured you out. I read your book." You remember that, Steve?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I think he says, "You magnificent bastard. I read your book." It was Infantry Attacks was Rommel's. He wrote it after World War I. It was, and obviously Patton was a huge reader. Let me ask you, though, as you were Secretary of Defense, you spent 30 plus years as a Special Forces Green Beret. You were then Secretary of Defense under President Trump, his last one in the first term. The grit and determination and toughness of our enlisted men and women and the fighters are still America's best. It's the senior command you see a total difference, right? You see almost like a pre-World War II, where the first thing Marshall and these guys did, people forget, they fired a lot of generals in World War II, particularly after you mentioned Kasserine Pass, you mentioned North Africa. They fired a guy that was a Kukendale that Patton came in and relieved Eisenhower. They would, if you didn't perform on the battlefield, you were gone. I mean, they were firing guys, field officers. They were firing colonels, brigadier generals, major generals. They were relieving guys for cause all the time, were they not, sir?
How many? Well, Marshall had a doggone black book because he ran the infantry school at Fort Benning, and he was just looking for talent in those interwar years, and he'd write names down like Jim Gavin. That guy's pretty good. Oh, who's this Omar Bradley? Wow, that guy really gets it done. And then, of course, when the war starts, like you said, Marshall just freaking wholesales, just decimates the highest ranking levels of leadership and military. And, let's go there. Who's been held accountable? Who got relieved in the last wars? A couple people did, but it was probably for political stuff and not war fighting failures. And that's, hey man, I'm pitching my book. That's the theme of the book, right? Is where's the accountability? We keep losing these wars. So what are we doing? Where are they? Infantry school developed a whole generation of just incredible officers that won World War II. Where are they now? I got to tell you though, I think they're out there. The young kids, you're not supposed to call them kids. I know I always do that. I always get criticized for that. But they're kids, man. I know we're a different generation. Those young people that volunteer to serve and those young leaders, they get it. We got to change the system, and that's the point I'm trying to get across in the book. Is where is our Marshall right now?
The book is called Soldier Secretary because you really represented the enlisted men, the fighting men and women. But what has happened? Is it political correctness? What has happened? Because when you read the book, I'll be blunt. And this is even before you get to the part that I got it to focus on, which was, keep it up there while I talk. Memphis, thanks. That's the cover. I want everybody to get a chance. It's a depressing book. And I say you don't even have to get to the J6 part or any in the Trump's, the 90 days that you were, the 100 days you were the Secretary of Defense after you came in November. It's the lead up because you see, thanks Memphis. You see all the places you stop. There's always, it's not about the valor and toughness and grit and sense of purpose of the fighters, but it's just this mentality that we're not there to win. I mean, it's kind of seeped in everywhere. That this gets to be deeper than just firing one or two guys. You now have a culture. I think your book is a great example of the cultural issue we have that MacArthur warned us about when he was relieved for cause over this very simple topic about victory. He said he came back to tell Congress there's no substitute for victory. And he laid out what was going to happen to the United States and what would particularly happen to our military on all these conflicts, like in Korea at the time, that were just going to be, we were happy to fight the stalemates. Secretary Miller, your thoughts?
Yeah, what else can I add, Steve? I mean, you just nailed it. And doggone, it's like we have people that are willing to serve, and they're magnificent. You know, and that's why I always love to get out of DC, because I'd be in DC. I know it was only 73 days. Not a lot went on, as you know. That was irony. I was trying to do that David Letterman ironic thing that doesn't seem to work that much anymore, because everybody takes everything out of context, which, boy, I'd love to chat with you about that maybe offline one of these times, about my experiences dealing with this political stuff that's going on. But let's go back to your point about warfighting effectiveness. And, you know, that's really what it's all about. You talked about Guadalcanal and how we had to doggone, you know, rid ourselves of leadership and practices to get ready to roll them back. And I know it sounds cliche, but I have yet to meet, I said this last time, I have yet to meet anybody who volunteers to serve to fight the culture wars. And my issue is that where are our leaders that are allowing all of this stuff to affect warfighting effectiveness? I just got back. I can't tell you where I was because a guy will get in trouble. But I went out before the book got published because I said I need to go back to the field and listen, not talk, listen to the people that are serving and see where have things changed. They haven't changed down in the trenches. They haven't changed when you're in a close quarter battle stack going through a door. All people want is like, hey, just let me do my job and, you know, support me. And that's the point I'm trying to make, you know, and I'm going to keep making it, Steve. This is kind of my calling, you know, call out this stuff. Do you remember, hey, can I ask you a question? You remember David Hackworth when he wrote that book about face, about his experiences? You know about face. I actually had the film rights to that book for a couple of years. About face, it's amazing book. Dude, I wish you would. That's you know, my book is not nearly as good as About Face because people can't pay attention for that long anymore. They can actually. I was trying to be ironic again, but that book, you bought the rights to that, man. You know how good that book is. That book formed my thinking and a whole generation of young leaders when we were like lieutenants and the sergeants, and you know that's why. Gee, you sound really angry. I'm like, I never thought that would happen again with. The experience Hackworth just talked about the same things we're talking about now. Steve, nothing's changed. What are we doing in this country? We've got to get people motivated to change the system that promotes, you know, officers into the extremely high ranks without guaranteeing that they're proficient at warfighting and they're not a bunch of political generals.
I want to talk about Hackworth, but it's ironic about MacArthur going back and giving that speech when he was relieved. Hackworth starts in Korea when he was enlisted man. Remember his opening scene where he's got an officer. They're in a convoy and the vehicle is broken. He's got a young second lieutenant that gets up trying to be like George Patton, takes his revolver out to be like funny or cute, and shoots the tire on the broken thing, and it ricochets off the hubcap. And it hits him right between the eyes. He's dead. His head's blown off right there. The book is a fascinating book about leadership and courage. I want to play because I definitely got to get to what we had a great interview with the other day. I think we broke some ground there about parts of the book. They're just amazing. Obviously, about the J6 and others. And then you had so for the audience, and I want to make sure Memphis doesn't have it, but for Grace and Captain Bannon, I want to get the entire 30-minute clip and put it up online after the show tonight so people can watch a real throwdown. I've not seen this on Morning Joe, and we monitor that show quite closely. Let's go ahead and play we got a shorter clip, and then we're bringing Chris Miller.
New York. I mean, certainly, as you know, there were calls from congressional leadership. Eventually, the vice president said, we need the National Guard.
Already been activated.
So
John,
at that point,
11:04, got the request at 3:04, got the request at 1500, 3 p.m.
Is that when the vice president called?
No, he called way later. Secretary McCarthy came in with a request for additional support. I'd already made the decision we were going to activate, but you got to and this isn't some bureaucratic thing, you got to let the process move.
So you said 3:04, and who made that request that got you guys moving at 3:04?
3 o'clock, Secretary McCarthy and General McConville of the Army Chief of Staff showed up at my office, said, here it is, we've got the request.
From whom?
From the mayor of Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
Did you ever hear from President Trump that day?
No, we didn't need to.
Okay. And in that moment, after watching his action or inaction that day, there were other concerns. David knows this well. Voice of the military that President Trump was still in office for 2 more weeks at that point. That he might use the military at some point, then call for some sort of either strike or overseas, or potentially deploy ask to give you some sort of order at home. Did you share that concern?
No, not in the least. I just thought
why not?
I thought it was just political bluster and hyperbole. And I knew that I was very confident based on my experiences with the president's decision making in national security and foreign policy. We'd been through a couple repetitions by this point. I wasn't concerned at all.
You didn't think that he might invoke the Insurrection Act?
No.
You talked about it.
No, because I've been told that he wasn't going to invoke the insurrection.
Who told you that?
I heard that from one of his people, Johnny McEntee. He was
On that day, you said the
no,
president.
not on that day. A couple days prior. So I wasn't concerned. I mean, I'm just telling you.
Okay, I guess
But every Secretary of
Question
Defense preceding you was concerned.
Yeah, I mean,
And
just watching him and knowing him, how could you not be? He's very unpredictable, and he says he's going to do certain things, and people have learned over time to believe him. And, you look at different events in this presidency, starting at Charlottesville. You didn't have any of these concerns?
When we were dealing with foreign policy and national security decisions, all of my experiences, interaction with the president and his decision making, I was very comfortable with. If I wasn't, I would have left. I mean, that's how it works.
let's go to.
I will guarantee you right now that Chris Miller will never be invited back to Morning Joe. I've never seen it, dude. Was it 8-on-1? Was it 8-on-1 around that table? You handle yourself magnificently. It was 8-on-1. You see these films from Smithsonian or National Geographic. It's got the old lion, and you got 8 jackals around, and they start biting. Chris Miller, brother. First off, I got to talk to Hachette, your book publisher. Who does that to a guy? Who's the publicist for this book? Well, my staff sitting here, it was early, they called me. If I hadn't gotten to the studio, they said, hey, Miller's there, and it's like 10-on-1. Walk us through that, sir.
Hey, Steve, this is what I want to talk to you about offline sometime, about where we are as a country, because you're ahead of me in my thinking, and I'm still developing. And yesterday was a really important day in my development of political thinking, because I've always been a national security guy. But I thought that I think the American public needs to hear all perspectives. And so I was willing to go into the lion's den on that one gladly, knowing it wasn't going to probably end well, because I know you can call me like completely naive, which I'll take it. I was like, hey, we need to talk about this stuff, and we need to be able to talk about it, in a little longer form. So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. You think I'm an idiot for doing it?
Yes. No. I think you're brave. I think it had to be done. I think it's magnificent. But no, you're an idiot to think that they want to have a full discussion. They're not there to talk about the Clausewitzian strategy laid out in your book. That's all kill zone. They want to show Trump. They want to provide stuff for the grand jury so that Trump can be thrown in prison for the rest of his life. That's what they're trying to do. They were coming at you from each and every angle.
You didn't see it. You didn't see. I had my Ranger handbook from the Bible of my existence for 30-something years. I had to have a talisman with me, so I'm taking my Ranger handbook in here just to give me strength, man. So yeah, I got to tell you, in some ways, I really was glad that I had the opportunity to say my piece, although so people don't want to hear it,
No, it was fantastic. Let's go, but I want to go back to something we did the other day. We talked about the other day, because my phone blew up after our first interview. But according to the book, right, and it's Sunday afternoon. The J6 was a Tuesday, correct? Mm-hmm. Monday was the 5th, and so Sunday the 4th. It was Sunday the 4th that you called for and had a conference call, not a face-to-face meeting, but had a conference call because you were at that time a little worried personally. Had everything been, had all the boxes been checked, and you hadn't seen a punch list? Nobody sent, as in the military, nobody sent a punch list of how we're supposed to prepare for this thing. particularly like FBI, DOJ. So you initiated a conference call, correct?
I did, and I knew I was going to get hassled. Like, we all knew that there was going to be litigation down the road. I mean, you know how this game works in DC, but I kind of flashed back to being an Army officer, and I was like, this thing's not wired tight, and we need to have a conference call. I wanted to do it in person, but remember, it was right the holiday weekend, right? So people were all over, and I said, we got to sync ourselves across the government. So I called that meeting. We had we did it that day, and then we did another one. I can't remember. I have my notes, or there's a diary of it that was published. So yeah, I was the guy who was like, hey, because I had my Ranger handbook, man. I was like, hey, we got to do some coordinating here.
So on that call, you initiated this call on 4 January, and according to the book, you had DOJ, but FBI didn't have a senior. DOJ was speaking for the FBI. The FBI, at least in the book, I don't believe had a representative. You had representative from Capitol Police and from FBI, but there weren't the head guys. This was not Rosen was on as acting attorney general. Do you remember who the FBI person was?
I don't remember. I'd have to look that up again. And I got all sorts of. It was not a well-run meeting. You're supposed to have an agenda, and all the military people are like, "That's the worst meeting we've ever had." And I was like, "Hey, listen, this is interagency. This is a whole government thing. They don't think like you do." The purpose was, storming, forming, norming. I was like, "We need to get through storming, forming, and norming, and get to performing like in the next 24, 40, 48 hours." So that first meeting is like, I just needed to highlight, guys, we have a responsibility to the president and to our nation to make sure we're talking to each other. And this is, fundamental. It didn't take a doggone intelligence professional to see what was going on in social media to go, things have changed dramatically from previous episodes. So that was my concern.
But this is the point. I mean, that's why the conference call, the meeting, is so important. And I noticed that Morning Joe didn't want to spend a lot of time on it because they don't want to talk about what the real story is here. The real story, quite frankly, is not the reaction of what happened on the event. That's noise. The signal is leading up to the event. That's the important stuff. When you were on that call, did you feel that you had because defense intelligence and your aspects of the intelligence community has no bearing here. You're not supposed to do any domestic surveillance, so that had to come from other people. Was there a full intelligence briefing on the call, or did it seem like, given all the chatters out there, and I say chatter just on MSNBC and CNN nonstop over the holiday weekend about what was going to happen on J6, the 6th of January, on Tuesday, was there any real intelligence briefing or anybody in the government, since you had the heads of not just the D.C. government, but really the leadership of the federal government, did you get a full intelligence briefing, or did you think anybody had a modicum of understanding about what was going to happen?
Great question. Thank you. That's the stuff we need to talk about, right? We started this meeting with, you always start with intelligence. And I think it was Homeland Security, good brief. But the thing is, the intelligence community only wants, we have this verified factual data, and they weren't going with no, are you guys doing any social media scraping? We're looking at it, but we can't make an assessment. And that's the way the enterprise works. So yeah, we had the intel brief. It was short, but it was I thought good enough to go man, there's a possibility. Steve, remember there'd been 2 episodes after Black Lives Matter protest in June. There have been 2 other demonstrations that had happened that resulted in violence. So this wasn't like rocket science. It didn't take a PhD in game theory or anything to figure out that there was high likelihood there were going to be clashes that day. And I think we had a good enough picture. Didn't see the storming of the Capitol, but hey, remember, Capitol Hill Police is and Metropolitan Police is we got this, Well,
but I want to. By the way, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back. We also have Royce White with us. But Chris, there had been, after the election, I think it was November 12th or 1st March, and people believe that drew 1 million people. And that was a spring-like day. It was like a family event. It was very upbeat because at that time, most President Trump supporters thought that the election was that the true numbers were going to come out. In fact, I think it's Saturday, and that election was when AP, Associated Press, actually called it at like 11:30 in the morning. But it was a very upbeat. A couple weeks later, when the Electoral College met, I think 50,000 people. It was a much smaller, but still 50,000 people. I believe in the book, you say that in the intelligence briefing you got, and I think it's attributed to Capitol Police, they thought 35,000 people were going to be the crowd. So it's not about whether people are going to be violent enough, just even the size and scale and understanding. It appears, at least as you say in the book, a complete misread by whatever intelligence was given. And this is why I think it's so important to have hearings now. We need to know what the House, Nancy Pelosi, the administration, we need to get all the facts on the table, because the most disturbing thing in your book is how not President Trump, right, but the apparatus of the administrative state, somehow this failed to click, and it doesn't make any sense. You have more questions than not when you read your book, and I think that's the power of this book, and quite frankly, why the Morning Joe guys don't want to talk about the most important parts of a short commercial break. Secretary of Defense Chris Miller under President Trump next.
Battleground with Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, welcome back. Chris Miller, the last Secretary of Defense under President Trump, is there. So, Chris, when the assessment was 35, I just want to make sure the audience understands this. The Capitol Police or D.C. Metro told you we can handle up to 1 million, right? So this is like nothing even to worry about. There's nothing to see here. This is a non-event, correct?
Steve, remember when you were in the Navy and you get your intel brief and it would change like every 20 minutes and you're like, clearly we don't know what's going on. So it started earlier, but well before, like in the first or second, it was going to be 5,000 protesters, demonstrators, whatever. And then we got to 35. And I think the actual number, which I don't think's really come out. I thought we'd find that in the 1/6 thing. And like you said, we really don't have a serious investigation yet about what the heck happened. And it was 35,000. So here, let me give some context. So, I'm the Secretary of Defense. I'm not supposed to be doing like domestic stuff, right? That's not what the Department of Defense does, except when natural disaster, civil, breakdown of civil society. But when it comes down to it, so the Metropolitan Police, I wish I would have taped the conversations, but that's not the way I roll. And I wish I had the person's name. It was so clear. Like, it was like, hey, JV military, right? Hey, there was like a thought bubble, I think. What the words are coming out is we have typically, we're going to have 10,000 police in the street. That is the force structure we have to handle up to 1 million protesters. Thought bubble, though. Let's get the thought bubble. It's like, hey, JV military guys, stay the F out of our way. We got this. So, Steve, I'm like, that's all I wanted to know. I just wanted to know that, like, hey, cops got this. We're in a good place. Just wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be any huge need for military presence. But let's be clear. If Capitol Hill Police would have said, I need 10,000 soldiers, President had already authorized me to make that decision, I would have given him it. I got a request from Mayor Bowser. What was it, a couple hundred? At the end of the day, they ended up having about 400 or 500 on duty that day. But it's kind of like, what's going on?
The president the following day, I think it was Monday, asked you in a meeting. I think you had a meeting with him on another topic. He asked you about preparations. He called you, asked about preparations, and you said, hey, she's asked for 325, and I think we're going to station them out at Joint Base Andrews Air Force Base. And he said, oh, you're going to need 10,000, right? He said you're going to need 10,000.
You can argue. They're like, oh, what does that mean? He said that, and he gave me full authorization. And Steve, I'm getting too loud, I know, but you're like, you get me going on this. You do this on purpose, I know. And like the memes would be great as I'm sitting like a hostage here. But the key point is on that, the way the military works is when you get your authorization, when your boss gives you the authority, you don't go back and ask for more questions. I'm a special operator. You get your mission, you get your commander's intent, and you go execute. You don't go back like every 15 minutes. Hey, boss, I just want to check on things.
Take a message to Garcia.
There you go.
We got to bounce, but I want to make sure everybody gets his book, the Soldier Secretary, because it's a fascinating view of really the wars we fought over the last 20 or 30 years, and really the task and purpose of the military as seen from a soldier's perspective. And then it finishes kind of out of nowhere with Chris as acting Secretary of State under President Trump during probably one of the most trying times in any administration in history. You just called for something, and because we're going to have you back on, but you said, quote, "We need a serious investigation of that day." And I would take you mean the lead up to it too. Do you not believe that the J6 Moscow show trial with the 845-page book that's out and then thousands and thousands of pages of testimony, you don't believe that was serious?
No, I still think there are unanswered questions, and we all know those questions. And I thought I'm concerned about lessons learned from national security perspective, and that's why I read it. I didn't read it all. I read the portions about National Guard and the timeline, but I'm still left with a bunch of like, why didn't they ask so and so about this?
Would you be a supporter to Speaker McCarthy, that you think that the Republicans ought to really have a true investigation of everything around January 6th and bring people in under subpoena, do depositions, and allow the Democrats to have a ranking member and a minority counsel so they could cross-examine witnesses, so we could really get on the record under sworn depositions, sworn testimony with cross-examinations to really get to the bottom of what happened, sir, in the run-up and then that day?
I thought that's what they were supposed to do, but then it all got muddled and politicized, and I thought we were going to have like a September 11th, 2001 commission where we'd come out the other side and figure out how to do better as America and, capture those lessons learned, and I don't think it's happened yet.
And you would be an advocate to do that, though, correct?
Hey, I don't want to go up there ever again, Steve. I'm just telling you as a selfish American private citizen now, but I would absolutely go up there and go under oath again and do, I only did 18 hours of testimony on this. So I'll go up there for another 18 if that's what it takes to, figure this out and strengthen America.
If President Trump asked you to be his Secretary of Defense, not acting, but a Secretary of Defense in his second term, would you do that?
I can't imagine he would. And sounds trite, but he'd have to call my wife, man. That was a tough episode for our family. And wow, I don't know if I could put him through that again.
Your wife is not I take it she does not wear a red MAGA ball cap around the house?
No, we're kind of like that James Carville, Mary Matlin thing from back in the day, So she supported me in serving our country, and we'd have a serious talk. But I would, for once, defer to the family recommendation. We take a family vote on that one. I know I sound like, Vice President Pence, like, I don't know.
Yeah. We just unsold a bunch of books, but that's okay. Tell your wife she just got to watch War Room more. We'll flip her. Chris, how do people get the book? How do they get to your book tour? How do they get to your social media?
Oh, gosh, I'm on Twitter now. They made me go on Twitter. The publisher did. I don't even know my handle. But really, Amazon, go Barnes & Noble. Walmart's carrying it online. Want to get it in the store, Sam's Club, et cetera, but probably easiest way, just get on Amazon, knock it out.
No.
Appreciate it. Hey, Steve, I'm going to give if I make any money on this book, I'm going to give a heck of a lot of it back to veterans causes and suicide prevention and stuff like that.
Fantastic. And by the way, for full disclosure, you're in the book. You've always got your wife. She's giving you the eye roll all the time, so it's not that you're hiding anything that's in the book. It's pretty obvious she's not a fan of your last mission. Chris Miller, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for going into the lion's den over there at Morning Joe and coming out unscathed.
I appreciate you. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you, brother. Let's go now. Royce White's got a new endeavor. Let me bring, do I have a cold open for Royce? Okay, let me get Royce. By the way, that is the most dramatic shot. I got to talk to my set designer. That's the most dramatic shot in all media. I mean, it's mesmerizing. Royce, first off, tell me about leadership. You've been a leader of men all your life, right? Yeah. You're one of the true to-the-bone warriors I know. You're an independent thinker. You kind of, hey, you take some positions and you get hit by the left, the right, everybody. Talk to me about when you hear Chris Miller, Secretary of Defense, you hear about the wars we fought, all of this. Give us your sense right now of American leadership.
Well, thanks for having me on again, and I appreciate the high praise. I have similar praise for you as well. I would say that America is suffering from a crisis of leadership, but there's a crisis of leadership around the world, and really there's a crisis of sacred honor. When I hear, Chris talk the way that he did, it's very apparent that he has a very high sense of integrity and sacred honor. And I, respect and admire the way he handled himself in the Lion's Den there. Can't say that I would have been as temperate as he was. But then again, they would never invite me to come on Morning Mika, Morning Joe either. I think by and large, there's a crisis of leadership, and we have to do our best as individuals to find people who are willing to stand alone and stand alone on the truth. It can be a very lonely place, but we have to find those people, and we have to support those people, and we have to trust in those people as best we can, but still vet them and still be hypercritical of their actions and of the things that they do. These are very, very dramatic times, hence the set design here, right?
Very dramatic. Why would Morning Mika, Morning Joe, they pride themselves on being the conventional wisdom and where you go for the inside baseball on what's conventional wisdom? Why would they not have someone of your stature, talents, and leadership and kind of a rising new voice on the right? Why would they not have you on Morning Mika?
Well, because I know who her father was, right? I know the effect that Brzezinski had on this entire post-World War II democratic liberal order. And they tend not to have people on that want to draw the focus of the American people and really anybody else in their audience to the bigger picture or the 60 to 70 year agenda that's been deployed on the American people through our politicians, through our corporations, through the military industrial complex, through a number of different institutions. Corrupt people who do not have this country's best interest at heart, and certainly not the citizens or the value of citizenship. They know I know those things, and they know that I'll speak to those things at a moment's notice. And I wouldn't miss a chance to talk about Brzezinski, Mika's father, if I had the chance to go on Morning Joe. I have very specific questions for Mika and how she was raised.
The last week has had a woman who you were running against for Congress bounced off of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. At the same time, a group or individual you've designated as one of the great existential threats in the world, the Chinese Communist Party, sent either weapons platform or surveillance platform across the United States, of which our elites did nothing about it. Talk to me about those two events. Was it ironic they both happened around the same time? And are you comfortable with either the transparency of what happened with Xi in the balloon or the response of either the Biden administration or even the Republicans in the House?
I'm completely uncomfortable with the Biden administration's reaction to the balloon. I think in the grand scheme of things, they didn't feel that it was a threat because to them it's not a threat. Because to them, President Xi and China, as an entity, as a player in this global jump ball, is something that they admire and want to emulate. They have completely diametrically opposed political philosophy, but all of their their ambitions towards authoritarianism and tyranny point right at President Xi, and they wish they could replicate it here in America. And they wish they could replicate it in a more overt fashion, and they're starting to do that as we see. So, you know, any real patriot, any real leader of this country that understood the existential threat that the CCP is, would have acted in a very different way. And as far as Ilhan Omar goes, look, I've said it on the show before. I think that she is working for the globalists. But, you know, we have to be clear about who the globalists are and who they've deployed around the world. Many, and I've told you this before in private, I think there are many rising nations, many key nations in the Middle East that are running dogs for the globalists. So you have this sort of four-player jump ball happening. You have the free people of America, and by proxy, the free people all around the world, where American citizens in their proper form represent a bastion against tyranny and globalism from the word go. So you have the free people of the world in America, and then you have the globalists in Russia and China. And the fight between them is one of national dictatorship versus international dictatorship. And you know, the Saudis and many other rising globalist metropolitan Muslim nations are carrying water for the globalists or the CCP. You know, they're kind of on the fence, saying who you know, where their chips will fall. But ultimately, they'll do the bidding as well. And Ilhan comes straight from out of that Shark Tank.
Walk to me. You mentioned this. Use this concept of this intellectual construct called the free people and the free people of America. I think you've named your new radio channel, the show on the radio channel about that, or at least the radio channel. Walk us through, what does that concept mean? And walk us through this new media venture you just launched.
Well, you know, many people, and this is part of the other reason why Morning Mika they wouldn't have me on, or any of the mainstream media, because as a black man, I'm supposed to tell a certain narrative about my American citizenship and my identity. And I have completely antithetical views to the mainstream liberal establishment on this. And I understand that, in effect, whether intentional or not, which I believe it was intentional, the post-World War II democratic liberal order was used as a way to justify the managed decline of America and the devalue American citizenship. And in effect, what America was, with all of its flaws in its inception, was to protect the rights of the minority against a corrupt and tyrannical government, establishment, globalism. And that's what our Constitution lays out. That's what our Bill of Rights lays out. That's what the Declaration of Independence lays out, if you understand it that way. America was a moment after the post-Enlightenment era that saw the rise of industry, saw the dangers of science and all of these other things, and made a statement that we don't want this place, this New Jerusalem, to be bogged down by the ills and the philosophical and spiritual bankruptcy of man. And so that is who the free people are. And America is supposed to be the bastion of that. And I feel a certain duty and obligation to carry that idea of free people into this most, you know, tyrannical time we live in. And there are free people everywhere. There are free people there in China. There are free people there in Russia. There are free people there in Europe. There are free people in the Middle East. There are free people everywhere. But they need to stand up and demand that their leaders stop scamming them.
Tell us about the show and tell us about the channel. How do people get to it? How are you going to expand? How can people participate? How can they support? We want to hear. We got about 3 minutes. We want to hear all of it.
Well, we're Free People Radio. You can go find out more information at freepeopleradio.com. There we have 2 podcasts currently listed. Mine, Please Call Me Crazy, which I've been called crazy a number of times by the liberal establishment. One, for being friends with you, and I wear that as a badge of honor. You're one of the best voices in all of our society right now. So Please Call Me Crazy is listed, and then also the Professor Penn podcast. Professor Penn is a comrade of mine and a mentor of sorts, and has a wealth of knowledge and lived through much of the policy and the history that many of us only can read about. Not in your audience, obviously. We have some good veterans and elders in this audience as well. But he's a great wealth of knowledge as well. So his podcast is listed. For me, Please Call Me Crazy will be premiering on YouTube Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I know our MAGA community and our War Room posse have a deep animus towards YouTube, but I'm of the thinking that we should try and take a foothold back inside these institutions as best as we can. For that reason, we also will air each episode on Rumble at 9 p.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And that's the lineup for now. The shows go about an hour and a half. The first episode, I spent 2.5 hours just going back over my fight with the NBA, which you could say is the bastion of globalism in post-World War II democratic liberal order, corporate policy, and corporate culture. But today I plan to get into the war between Russia and Ukraine and this idea of this 4-player jump ball. So the only way to support now is to just like and subscribe, comment, be a force multiplier and help us get the ship to altitude so we can continue to have these conversations and bring content to the people who need it, the people who want it.
Real quickly, you're not afraid of being given controversy. You take on some pretty controversial topics, and you've got your own angle of attack. You're not afraid. I think our audience will say, hey, it's not that we have anything against YouTube, except the fact that voices like Royce White are always the voices they pulled down first. You're not to mention that the war has been permanently banned. You're not worried about that, or is that why you have Rumble as a backup?
Well, we have Rumble as a backup, we have BitChute as a backup, and we're looking at some other video backups as well. But ultimately, I would like to bring a person like you back onto YouTube, and I think one of the things that really shifted my political worldview the most was me being an early listener of War Room during the pandemic, during the early days of the pandemic, and hearing one of the most coherent and detailed explorations of what we were facing, and then to see YouTube or big tech in general go after you and ban you. So, I would like to have you be one of the first people that I interview on my Family and Friends Friday with Please Call Me Crazy. And we have to keep banging on the door. When we abnegate and when we abnegate and when we resign from society, we give all of the authoritarians and tyranny the right to run roughshod over us. And that's not being American either. YouTube is an American institution, whether they like it or not, and we should continue to fight to have that institution.
Royce White, Please Call Me Crazy is the show. The Free People's Radio is the network, his new channel. We're going to be a huge supporter of both. Honored to have you on here, sir. We look forward to pushing it out. The Royce White, Please Call Me Crazy. We're going to be back at 10 a.m. tomorrow, live, Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you then in the War Room.